Hello and welcome to FTW Philly, presented by Temple University. I'm your host, Marisa Magnatta, here for a very bittersweet episode, as it is our final one of the season. But I am joined virtually, as I have been all year long, by my host, Rosemary Kelly. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Marissa. I hope you are too. I am just so excited about this final episode because we still have a lot to show you, but man, we've been through a lot this season.
We have. We've met some incredible people. We've played some really fun games. And I think we've had a lot of fun ourselves. Do you know that we've never met? We've never met in person. We've done it just like this the entire time.
I know, but that's why I still owe you a coffee.
I can't wait. And you are going to teach me so many games, how to play them.
Oh, absolutely. We got our bucket list that we've got to get through.
Yes, we do. Well, let's kick this episode off with some esports news. What do you think?
Sounds great. Let's get it started. Here is your last round of esports news for the season. To kick things off, the Olympic Games have announced a new virtual series, which will bring video games one step closer to becoming a part of the Olympic Games. The virtual series is set to be staged ahead of the Summer Olympic Games in Tokyo, which will feature a slate of auto racing, baseball, cycling, rowing, and sailing. We featured auto racing a few times on the show, but what's most exciting is the roadmap detailing the growth and implementation of digital engagement, starting with the development of virtual sports. Hopefully, we'll see games like League of Legends and Overwatch come to the Olympics soon. Next, the University of Michigan has unveiled a new esports minor, thanks to the generous donation of Robert Kotick, the CEO of Activision Blizzard. Esports is quickly becoming a staple at many universities, hoping to prepare students for the world of esports entertainment. In some cases, this means having esports teams, but in this case, it means creating curriculum for students to take at the School of Information at the University of Michigan. As a UMich alumnus, Kotick sent $4 million to the University of Michigan for the creation of the new esports program, one of several options available across universities and colleges. Finally, let's provide an update about how our home team, the Philadelphia Fusion, are doing in the Overwatch League. The Philadelphia Fusion are now 4-0, completely undefeated at the end of Week 2 in the Eastern region of the Overwatch League. The Fusion were able to secure wins versus the Hangzhou Spark 3-1, as well as the Chengdu Hunters 3-1. Let's go Fusion! Since this is our last episode of the season, I wanted to give you a huge thank you to you viewers at home that have tuned in to For the Win Philly for all of your esports news. Thank you so much for watching, and it's been a pleasure to be your guide throughout all of the esports action. Well, this is my final That's It for the Esports headlines. Now let's kick it over to Darv to give you your latest in gaming news.
Welcome to Field of View with Nerd Street Gamers, your weekly dose of gaming news. I'm Darth Mike coming to you live from the sand-swept halls of Bind, and I'm supposed to be on guard duty, but I've got some scoops for you, so let's get into it. As much as I might enjoy the harsh, grating sun of Bind, I'm feeling something a little more tropical, and I might get my wish. There's a new map coming to Valorant. It's called Breeze, and it's set on a beautiful tropical island, complete with beach and breeze and ocean and all the wonderful things that entails. It's also going to radically change the way the maps are shaped. We've come to expect tight corridors and corners to clear on Valorant maps. Well, this one's going to be much more wide open. Big sights, long sight lines, long engagements to deal with, lots of sniper angles to consider. It's really going to change up the way you have to think about the game. It's also going to add an element of spice to the esports world where they'll have to rethink their vetoes and they're going to take on a whole new significance. If you want to explore Breeze and all that it has to offer, you might consider picking up the Battle Pass, which you can get for $9.99 or 1,000 Valorant points to get all the new skins and stickers and gun buddies and what's nots and who's its. But hop in when the map drops with the new act to check out and explore all that Breeze has to offer. Good news for all you Apex Legends fans out there, which is that with the new season's content, you're getting a whole new game mode. Called Arenas, it's going to be a 3v3 squad against squad combat game where you battle out against one squad over multiple rounds to try and come out on top. There's also an in-game economy that you use to buy and upgrade your weapons that'll progress over multiple rounds, like a game you may have heard of, Counter-Strike, and it looks pretty dang cool. It's also a really neat way to evolve the games as a service model model where instead of just plugging new cosmetics into your existing game, you take the wireframe you built for that game and you plug it into a whole new genre. It's an awesome idea, and especially for a game like Apex where the movement and the gunplay feels so good, to just take all of that and put it in a new style of FPS is a stroke of brilliance. It's going to help keep the game feeling fresh, new, and exciting for years yet to come. So check it out when the arenas drop on May 4th. In this week's unexpected news, two video game studios, Oculus Studios and Respawn, became part winners of an Oscar for their work in co-producing a documentary, Colette, that debuted in Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, a VR Medal of Honor game. The documentary follows Colette as she relives her experiences fighting as part of the French resistance in World War II many years later. It's a touching piece, and if you don't have access to VR or Medal of Honor Above and Beyond in particular, but want to watch the film, you can do so on the Guardian's website where they've hosted it for free for all to see. That's it for this week on Field of View with Nerd Street Gamers, your weekly dose of gaming news. I've been talking to you all for a little while, and none of my teammates have calmed in a while, so I think I better go check out what happened on the other site.
Thank you so much, Darf, for bringing us the final dose of gaming news for the season. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show with us and to hear all of your expert analysis and insight onto what the world of gaming has to offer. Marisa, I feel like my favorite moments were when we got a chance to hear about all of the new titles that were coming out.
Oh yeah, he has been on top of it all season long. Everything we want to talk about and hear about, he's got it. We're lucky to have him here with us.
We are, absolutely. And coming up next, we've got an incredible feature that is going to bring you into the world of video game sound and music.
Yes, we're going to meet Isabella Ness. She is a Temple University graduate. In fact, she's a 30 Under 30 award winner. And here she is.
Hey, I'm Isabella. I am a senior sound designer and producer in Austin, Texas with a company called Team Audio. We work on games providing audio from tip to tail, whether it is AAA, indie, mobile, and something as simple as a few sound effects to every bit of sound that you hear in the game and make games sound good. I have always been really interested in music. When I was at Temple, I studied and got my degree in music composition. So writing music has been important to me. Performing music has been important to me. And what I discovered the more time that I spent sort of exploring music and things that make sound professionally was that the collaborative nature of making sounds was really, really engaging. And the more time I spent in the field and sort of distilled, okay, this is fun, okay, this is enjoyable for me, and then eventually, okay, I would like to find work in this field. It was all about the teammates, and a great team can make a lackluster project feel like the magnum opus, and a terrible team can make an amazing project really, really stumble. When I was a kid, the types of games that I played were pretty varied, but I think the sounds that kept engaging me over and over again when I was first cognizant of the fact that I was enjoying playing video games were sort of rooted at first in like chiptune and kind of like that early 2000s retro style Y2K-ish vibe. It was like a mix of sci-fi and fantasy in titles like Phantasy Star and a lot of other JRPGs that I was playing at that time. I was a huge, and still am, a huge fan of Phantasy Star. Back in the day, on GameCube, that was the game, like 100% of that one completely. And that's like sort of novo retro JRPG style sound effects and music. And it was just so inspiring to play that and be like, oh, like this is moving me as much as sort of your run-of-the-mill classical music does. They sort of decorated the weapons that you were wielding, the techniques that you were using for magic. And it was sort of that extra layer of like, okay, this feels really good in the moment when you cast it or when you swing that weapon. And then it just heightens the gameplay tenfold. When I was in high school, I was really involved in performing arts, so theater, choir, those two in particular. And I was getting really excited about music in all forms and sort of figuring out where ambitions really lied. Was it in performing? Was it in directing? Was it in writing and creating? And I did end up wanting to pursue composition. And a big piece of what I wanted to do is that I wanted to make sure that wherever I ended up at school, particularly for college, was going to sort of arm me with skills that weren't just going to serve me in the moment, but were going to serve me for years to come. And at my interview for Temple, I not only felt just really at home, I just sort of, during that interview, it was like, okay, I feel heard and I feel understood and I feel like my goals could be met here. And to top it all off, Temple also has a pretty stellar and state-of-the-art media technology major in general with sound. When I was applying, it was specific to computer music. So it was synthesis and sort of learning a lot about analog sound and how that translates into digital. Those are skills that I am still using today. It was a very tangible positive for me to have when I was at Temple. So then it was, after applying and interviewing, it was down to them to accept me, and luckily they did, and I ended up going. The best thing that I learned while I was at school was learning how to collaborate with people. It was choir, it was critique on anybody else's work in audio and composition. I worked at the recording studio that we had on campus for several years. So I learned a lot about hardware, a lot about just sort of the basics about how to work with microphones, how to work with talent, how to kind of just on the most basic level work in a digital audio sphere. The best thing that I took away from Temple was working with the people that I met and made creative things with. It was very special to have so many opportunities to really, really take the baton and run with it in terms of collaboration and creativity, and really just pushing the envelope of what we were expected to be able to do as students. I would say that I think that I ran for the edges of the fence creatively as long as I was there, and I never hit it. In terms of sort of refilling the creative well and drawing inspiration from multiple places. Obviously, I work in game audio. Studying, consuming, and being critical of video games is like number one. I have to know my own industry. I have to know the products that other folks are putting out. I want to see what my colleagues are collaborating on, and my friends in the industry as well. So video games, definitely top of the list. Music, any sort of music, whether that be classical, pop, indie, electronic, whatever's coming out. Good music is really inspiring because it sort of it reinforces those foundations that I did get at school that was purely music. And then I also love studying theater and text. Dramatic arc and timing and tension is really important to know as well. There is a lot of sound design that has to do with understanding tension and release. And so physical movement can come into play there, where you can understand how it really truly feels to hold tension in your body and then to release it, or to sort of, run yourself ragged and feel exhausted by something. There's a lot of awareness that has to come into play when you're thinking of, okay, how do I design a good sound? It has to fit a lot of different criteria depending on the situation in which the sound will be coming up. So it really does benefit people who do audio to draw inspiration from things that don't necessarily always make sound. 9 times out of 10, it's more about how it communicates a feeling to the player rather than how does it sound.
I love what Isabella said at the very end of that first half of the interview, which was just sound is supposed to communicate a feeling rather than how does it sound. I thought that was so profound, and I feel like I've learned so much already from Isabella just from that first half of the interview.
Yeah, I'm so happy that she shared her journey with us. Everything she learned at Temple University and then brought it with her into the real world. It's making the cherry and the white very proud, I will say. But we have only scratched the surface with Isabella. Coming up next, she's going to show us how she does what she does.
Sound is one of the most important elements when it comes to making your audience feel something. Good sound design and good sound direction in general in games is absolutely paramount to making a player feel immersed, because it's one thing to be like, oh, that game looks really cool, or like this combat feels really fun, but nothing is going to be sold to a player unless they can feel it with as many senses as possible. Sound lends emotion to a piece, where you can have a beautiful visual element, or you can have a really, really gorgeous narrative, but sound can really subvert or sell an emotion that the media is communicating to you. So for instance, if we look at the famous scene from Castlevania, where Dracula is sitting in his throne, being very sumptuous and drinking his wine. If you notice, in that original scene, there is no music during that exchange.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
We can really sort of change the audience's perception, and we can either preempt the battle that's going to come, or we can sort of trick them into not really understanding. So if you look at it with a very dramatic, organy action music that will play in the boss battle to follow, this is what it sounds like.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
It was not by my hand that I'm once again given flesh.
Your words are as empty as your soul. Mankind ill needs a savior such as you.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets.
And then, if we take that same thing and we want to mislead our audience a little bit, and we want the player not quite to understand what's coming next, maybe we make the music a little bit more spooky.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
It was not by my hand that I'm once again given flesh.
Your words are as empty as your soul. Mankind ill needs a savior such as you.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets.
And so you can see that the way that a dramatic scenario is presented, particularly with the music behind it, can completely change the way a player experiences something in game. So the process for making a sound from start to finish totally depends on the type of sound that you're building. There can be sounds for UI elements, there can be environmental sounds, there can be creatures and weapons and outfits and footsteps and all those things. But I really love building creature sounds, so we're going to focus on creatures. I am going to pretend that this is a creature with a big giant mouthful of teeth and a teeny tiny little body. So for this one, I think that I would probably go out and record some source. I have a very small dog who has a tendency to make really funny sounds when we play, so I'd probably take off her collar, ready my microphone, and sort of rile her up and play and get some of those sort of funny, like goblin sounds. And then I would take those into my workstation. I would chop them up. I would find sort of the phrases that sound like a creature. You know, if this is a hostile creature, it will attack you on sight. So I'll find some of her more like rah, rah, rah sounds. And then I will slow those down. I might reverse them. I'll layer them together. I'll pitch them differently. I'll mix in some interesting texture sounds, maybe some like wet, squishy source to make it, because as we said, creature, tiny little body, big old mouth of teeth, to sort of mix that together and make it sound like it's coming from this giant mouth until it sounds satisfying. And then maybe it sounds really creepy, or maybe it sounds kind of goofy. And then for the body sounds, I'll probably record, I'll take footstep source, or I'll take actual recordings of animals walking or running, something that kind of has a body is comparable to what is in the game. And then same thing, I'll slow those down, I'll play with the pitches, I'll mix those together with a bunch of different textures. But then at the end of it, you come out of it with tons of different layers played together. But it's like an addition word problem. You add everything together and then you get a really cool result at the end. There are so many different techniques and so many different ways that sound can be made and sound can be synthesized and sound can be applied to something in media. I think it really does take patience, because the designer has to understand the context for the sound. It takes experimentation, because you have to figure out, just as much as you have to find what works, you have to figure out what absolutely doesn't work. So it's a lot of trial and error, and over time, you know, once, as anything creative, once you get used to the process, you'll be able to sort of find the pieces of yes and no more quickly. but you still want to be finding no more often than not, because I think if you don't use one technique for a certain sound, you very well might be using it for a different sound. There really is no wrong way to do something, and I would say that the only wrong way to do something is if you are miscommunicating the intent of the sound effect or the intent of the moment that makes sound. You know, if it's supposed to make them sad, it doesn't necessarily matter what the sound is so long as it makes them sad, or if it excites them, or it makes them feel like they've progressed or that they've gained something or earned it. It's all about communication and sort of leveraging the art to access that sense of inspiration, I guess, in the player. I think is probably one of the better terms. If somebody was looking to get into sound design, I would stress that they really study up on where digital sound in particular came from. I think to study the way that people designed sound for old movies, how the film industry operated from the inception of getting sound onto pictures, all the way up to more modern senses, because a lot of what film sound design is doing, it's laying the foundations for a lot of the ground that game audio is retreading. Because video games are getting more and more cinematic, we're using a lot more of those strategies to gather source, to get the technical prowess and mix it and put it together and really get it sounding cohesive. But I would say it's sort of a twofold thing: is study the origins and the basics of film sound, and then really just sort of let yourself experiment. It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of being comfortable, maybe not making the right choice, but just sort of going with it and trusting yourself to make creative decisions that will ultimately lead to the right decision, but you might not get there immediately. Yeah, it's a lot of trust, and a lot of excitement to just find the next thing that's going to work.
I wonder if Isabella's dog gets residuals for all the games that he's in.
I was wondering the exact same thing, but since it's the last episode, it's time to say thank you, Marisa. Thank you so much for being such an amazing person to work with on the show. It's been such an honor and pleasure to work with you, and I hope we get a chance to do it again soon.
Well, same. Nekkra, thank you for joining us this season. You have been a wonderful partner in crime all season long and taught me and everybody watching so much. And we have so many thank yous. I know I'm getting choked up here. The whole crew at Nerd Street Gamers, Maestro Filmworks, NBC Sports Philadelphia, all of you for watching this all season long.
Yeah, and Temple University for providing support for every single episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching, and we hope to see you soon.
Yeah, well, for the whole crew behind FTW Philly, presented by Temple University, I'm Marisa, and that is Nekkra, and we can't wait to see you guys next time.